You think you want your Kundalini to awaken, but you have no idea that you are playing with a sleeping serpent. You are begging for a revolution that will completely wipe out the person you were yesterday. This awakening is not a beautiful decoration for your ego. It is an absolute terrifying death. If a piece of coal wishes to become a diamond, it must first die as coal. Are you truly prepared to disappear? Hello, my beloved friends. I do not know why you have come here today, or what hidden thirst in your soul has brought you to this moment. Perhaps you yourself do not fully comprehend the true purpose of your journey. Most human beings live their entire lives in such a state of profound sleep, walking, talking, and working in a deep, mechanical unconsciousness that they fail to see that which is right in front of them. We are not even conscious of our own breathing, let alone the vast, invisible currents of cosmic energy that wrap around us from all sides, within and without. But I know exactly why I am here, and I know what I want to share with you. For countless lives, the human soul wanders through the darkness of existence, searching for a single glimpse of what we call bliss, peace, truth, or God. And when a seeker finally stumbles upon that ultimate, boundless reality, they often believe that the journey is over and that they can finally rest. But they are beautifully mistaken. The moment you find the Supreme, a new labor begins. You become restless to share it, just as a flower, upon blooming, cannot help but broadcast its fragrance to the winds, or as a heavy cloud must rain upon the thirsty earth. I am here to hold up a mirror to you, to help you see what is already so close to you. If you are here with the same intensity, if your heart is burning with the same fire to awaken, then our meeting on this digital platform will become a sacred phenomena. If this resonance touches something deep within you, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and share your reflections in the comments below, so that we can create a global community of awakened consciousness. Undoubtedly, there is a secret center inside each one of us that is currently lying dormant. It is the very same center that a Krishna comes to know when he begins his ecstatic dance, or that a Buddha awakens to when he leaves behind all worldly illusions to become the awakened one. We are all like electric bulbs, fully capable of radiating magnificent light, but the wire connecting us to the ultimate powerhouse has been neglected. The life force simply does not reach the center, and so we remain dark, cold, and unaware of our own divinity. To change this, to allow the divine current to flood your being, we must understand the mysterious energy known as Kundalini. The word Kundalini comes from Kunda, which means a pool or a still reservoir of water. It is also compared to a sleeping serpent, coiled at the base of the spine, resting its hood in complete passivity. This is the reservoir of all your potential energy, the primal seed of your life force. Right now, it is asleep because you have only used the tiniest fraction of your energy to survive. The ordinary human being goes through their entire life using only 2 or 3% of their potential, while even the greatest geniuses of human history barely touch 15%. The remaining 97% of your cosmic power lies completely untouched, buried in the dark basements of your unconscious mind. Because we live on the very surface of ourselves, we only experience this energy when it flows downward into the physical body, where it manifests as the sex urge. Sex is the descending movement of the very same energy that, when it moves upward toward the soul, becomes Kundalini. When the energy flows down, it leads to the creation of a physical child. When it travels up, it leads to the birth of your spiritual self. Both are explosions. Both are forms of union. But while sex gives you a momentary, fleeting glimpse of self-forgetfulness, the upward awakening of Kundalini brings you face to face with the eternal. But before you ever attempt to awaken this sleeping serpent, you must understand that it is a dangerous undertaking. There is nothing more hazardous in existence than trying to disturb this primal power, because it demands nothing less than your total destruction. It is a form of absolute death. Ordinary physical death only takes away your outer clothes, your material body, and leaves you to enter another garment in your next life. You do not truly change in physical death. But meditation, the awakening of the Kundalini, is a deeper, more radical death, because it snatches you away from yourself. The person you believe you are, your ego, your identity, your past, your prestige, all of it will turn to ashes in the fire of this awakening. If a seed wishes to become a magnificent tree, it must be willing to disintegrate, to lose its shape, and to die in the soil. If it is afraid of disappearing, it will remain a tiny hard seed forever, locked away from the immense glory of its own hidden potential. Many people are terrified of this spiritual insecurity, so they choose to live a safe, protected, and mechanical life. They turn their homes into comfortable graves, locking all the doors and windows so that no dangerous wind of truth can disturb them. But I tell you, true life is only found when you live dangerously. When you are willing to risk everything for the unknown. If you are ready to stake your entire life on this ultimate gamble, then you are ready to receive the grace of the beyond. To help you navigate this inner landscape and dive deeper into these esoteric truths, we have prepared a selection of ebooks that explore these methods in detail. You can find them through the links provided, or if you feel a deep sense of gratitude and wish to support our global mission of sharing this wisdom, you can click the official join button to become a member of our spiritual family, or use the super thanks feature to offer your love. Your support acts as a beautiful energy exchange that keeps this flame burning brightly for seekers all over the earth. To understand how this energy travels, we must look at the blueprint of our inner archaeology. The human being is made of 7 distinct bodies, each connected to a specific energy center or chakra along the spine. The first body is the physical body, which develops completely in the first 7 years of life. Its corresponding center is the Muladhara chakra, located at the base of the spine. The natural expression of this first chakra is the sex urge, and its transformed spiritual potential is brahmacharya, or absolute celibacy. Most of humanity remains stuck at this first step, treating the physical body and sexual gratification as the ultimate goal of existence. But the first chakra is merely the starting line, not the destination. When a seeker begins to suppress their sexual energy out of fear or moral conditioning, they create a massive obstacle. Suppression is not transformation. It is merely a way of fighting with your own roots. If you fight with the seed, how will the tree ever grow? Transformation only happens through deep, conscious understanding. When you become completely aware of your desires, when you look into your sexuality with total presence and mindfulness, the alchemy of awareness begins to operate. The energy naturally changes its direction, moving from the downward pull of the material world into the upward ascent of the second body. The second body is the etheric or emotional body, which matures between the ages of 7 and 14. It is intimately connected with the Swadhisthana chakra. The natural, unevolved qualities of this plane are fear, hatred, anger, and violence. These are the survival mechanisms given to us by nature. Fear protects us from danger. Anger prepares us to fight, and violence ensures our survival in a hostile world. But if you stagnate here, your life becomes a living hell of constant inner turmoil. The spiritual transformation of this chakra turns fear into fearlessness, hatred into love, and violence into deep compassion. Here too, the moralists make a grave mistake by telling you to suppress your anger and pretend to be non-violent. They teach you to wear a false smile while your heart is full of poison. This hypocrisy creates a split personality, a state of psychological madness. Sahaj Yoga, the natural way, tells us to accept the presence of anger and fear within ourselves, to look into them, to feel their heat, and to live through them with absolute awareness. When you fully understand the nature of a coin, you naturally become curious to see what is on the other side. And so the coin turns over. Violence effortlessly turns into forgiveness and love the moment it is completely exposed to the light of your consciousness. The third body is the astral body, developing between the ages of 14 and 21, and its center is the Manipur chakra, located near the navel. The primary characteristics of this third plane are thinking, logic, and doubt. This is the realm of the intellect, civilization, and culture. If a society stops growing after the second body, it becomes entirely sex-centered and aggressive. If it develops the third body, it becomes highly intellectual, philosophical, and scientific. The obstacle on this third plane is the trap of endless skepticism and indecision. A person who is caught in the wheel of thoughts can never arrive at a certain conclusion. They continue to debate, analyze, and hesitate forever. To transform this center, doubt must be allowed to reach its ultimate limit. You must pass through the most subtle processes of thinking until you begin to doubt doubt itself. When doubt commits suicide through its own intensity, pure discrimination or vivek is born, and blind doubt is transformed into absolute trust and clarity. This is not the blind faith of an ignorant person who is simply afraid to think. It is the open-eyed, luminous trust of a seer who has passed through the storm of thoughts and arrived at the silent center of direct knowing. The fourth body is the mental body or the psyche, spanning from the age of 21 to 28, and its center is the Anahat chakra, the heart center. The natural qualities of this psychic plane are imagination and dreaming. The mind is constantly creating daydreams, projecting desires into the future, and wandering through the illusions of the subconscious. But when the energy of the fourth body is transformed through meditation, imagination becomes iron willpower, and dreaming is transformed into objective psychic vision. A person who awakens the fourth chakra gains access to extraordinary faculties like telepathy, clairvoyance, astral projection, and thought reading. They can see beyond the limitations of time and space, witnessing events happening thousands of miles away as if they are occurring right in front of their eyes. This fourth plane is a realm of magnificent wonders, but it is also the most dangerous territory for a spiritual seeker. Because everything on this plane is subjective. The possibilities for self-deception are infinite. If you enter this fourth body with preconceived notions, expectations, or a hidden desire for spiritual power, your mind will immediately create false psychic experiences for you. It will project an imaginary awakening of the Kundalini, and you will fall into the illusion that your chakras are fully activated when you are simply experiencing a beautiful daydream. The true criterion of whether your Kundalini has awakened authentically on the psychic plane is never found in the stories you tell about your visions, but in the radical transformation of your daily behavior. The moment the vital energy truly awakens and ascends, the urge for violence and harm completely vanishes from your being. You do not have to practice non-violence as a moral vow. You simply cannot be violent because the other is no longer experienced as separate from you. All religious virtues like non-possession, absolute awareness, and purity become as natural and effortless as breathing. If a person claims that their Kundalini has awakened, yet they are still tortured by sexual obsession, greed, and anger, they are simply holding a counterfeit coin. They have fallen victim to the hypnotic deceptions of the fourth body, confusing a mental projection with a spiritual reality. The fifth body is the spiritual body, connected with the Visuddhi chakra in the throat, and it matures by the age of 35. Up to the fourth body, everything within the individual is split into duality. The difference between male and female, positive and negative, active and passive, persists through the first 4 layers of your existence. For instance, if a person has a male physical body, their second etheric body is female. Their third astral body is male, and their fourth psychic body is female. In a woman, this energetic blueprint is reversed. Her physical body is negative and receptive, but her inner etheric body is a powerful, aggressive male force. This internal polarity is the secret reason behind the complex dynamics of human relationships. Every man carries an inner woman within him, and every woman carries an inner man. Worldly marriage is simply an external search for a partner who matches this internal energetic reflection. But this external search is almost always a failure, leading to frustration, attachment, and spiritual slavery. True liberation only begins when your outer male or female energy turns inward, uniting with your own internal opposite pole. This inner marriage is the real meaning of celibacy or brahmacharya. It is the gathering of all your scattered dualistic forces into a single upward flowing current of life energy. When you cross the boundary of the 4th body and enter the 5th, the spiritual plane, all duality ends once and for all. The 5th body is entirely non-dual. It does not have 2 opposite possibilities, but only one. The greatest characteristic of a person who has entered this spiritual plane is absolute wakefulness. Such a person is completely rid of all unconscious sleep. When they go to bed at night, their physical body rests, but someone within remains forever alert, watching the breath, witnessing the state of the body, completely untouched by the darkness of slumber. Before entering this 5th plane, we all live like somnambulists, walking through the world in a state of waking sleep, acting out of mechanical habits and unconscious conditioning. We make promises we cannot keep. We fall into anger we do not want, and we speak words we immediately regret, simply because there is no conscious master inside the house of our body. But on the 5th plane, the master awakens. This is why a person who reaches this state is called a Buddha, an awakened one. The tormenting quest for identity, the anxious cry of "Who am I?" vanishes completely on this plane, because your true spiritual nature becomes a self-evident fact. You no longer need to prove your existence to anyone. You no longer seek prestige, wealth, or power to validate your ego, because the ego has died, leaving behind only the pure, blissful feeling of I-amness. Yet, even this magnificent spiritual body has its own unique trap. The bliss experienced on the fifth plane is so profound, so overwhelming, and so fulfilling that it becomes the greatest obstacle for the seeker. Up to the fourth body, the barriers you encountered were made of pain, anxiety, fear, and suffering, which were relatively easy to leave behind because the mind naturally wants to escape misery. But on the fifth plane, you enter a paradise of supreme joy and self-realization. It is incredibly difficult to leave this temple of bliss and continue the journey into the unknown. Many mystics and spiritual paths have stopped right here, declaring that self-realization is the ultimate goal of existence, mistakenly believing that the soul is separate from the absolute whole. Standing on the fifth plane, the seeker still clings to their individual existence, to the feeling of amness. They have dropped the ego, but they have not yet dropped the self. To go further, to reach the cosmic and the ultimate void, you must become bored even of your own bliss. You must develop a profound thirst for absolute truth that is greater than your attachment to spiritual joy. You must be willing to take the next dangerous leap, moving from freedom from suffering into total freedom from the self. To prepare the body and mind for this ultimate transcendence, we must use a scientific method that forces the life energy out of its ancient dormant state. This is why I have designed the method of dynamic meditation, a technique of transformation through the extremes. You cannot find absolute relaxation unless you first reach the absolute peak of tension. We must deliberately create a magnificent storm within our physical and mental structure, so that the sleeping serpent is sucked out of its coils. The first indispensable step of this process is 10 minutes of deep, fast, and chaotic breathing. You must become a breathing machine, a powerful bellows that pulls the oxygen in and drives the carbon dioxide out with total intensity. This chaotic breathing completely alters the chemical ratio of gases within your body, electrifying your nervous system and hammering the primal reservoir of energy at the base of your spine. It shakes the very bridge that connects your soul to your physical body. When you vibrate with this intense friction, a great heat is generated and the latent current of your life force is awakened. It begins to shatter the armor of your social conditioning, releasing the thousands of repressed emotional complexes that you have locked away in your unconscious mind since childhood. As this energetic fire flares up, you must be prepared to let go of your physical body completely in the second stage, allowing it to move, shake, cry, laugh, or dance with absolute spontaneity without any interference from your civilized intellect. You must become a total witness to this cosmic dance happening within you, standing apart as an observer on the hills, preparing your entire being to plunge into the silent, existential depth of the ultimate question. When you stand at the edge of this internal frontier, ready to dive into the absolute reality of your being, you must understand the complete architecture of the 7 bodies and their corresponding energy centers. This inner archaeology is not a theoretical philosophy. It is a map of your living existence. As I have told you, the first body is the physical, anchored at the Mooladhara chakra. It is the soil from which everything grows. But right behind this grass physical layer lies your second body, the etheric or emotional body, which is connected to the Swadhisthana chakra. This center carries the raw, uncarved forces of nature within you. Its natural biological expressions are fear, hatred, anger, and violence. These are not your enemies, they are simply the unevolved resources of your life force. If a person gets stuck in this second body, they live a life ruled by blind reaction. They look at the world through the lenses of hostility and fear, constantly defending themselves against imaginary threats. The spiritual transformation of this center happens when these dark forces are not suppressed but completely understood. Look into your anger. Do not hide it behind a mask of artificial politeness. Society teaches you to suppress your emotions, to smile when you want to weep, and to act peaceful when you are boiling with rage. This suppression is a poisonous crime against your own consciousness. It turns you into a hypocrite, a divided house that cannot stand. Sahaja Yoga tells you to accept your fear, to own your anger, and to look at them with total, non-judgmental presence. When you shine the light of absolute awareness onto your anger, a beautiful phenomena occurs. The energy of anger undergoes an alchemical change and turns into forgiveness. The energy of fear dissolves and turns into absolute fearlessness. They are 2 sides of the same coin. If you hide the coin out of moral shame, you will never know the beauty hidden on its other side. A coward cannot find truth because he is always begging for security. He wants a safe religion, a comfortable path where his ego is never shattered. But truth is only available to those who are ready to face the raw reality of what they are. Beyond the etheric lies your third body, the astral body, which is intimately connected with the Manipur chakra, located near the navel. This is the center of thinking, intellect, and reasoning. When a society develops this third body fully, it experiences massive intellectual and scientific revolutions. It gives birth to logic, culture, and civilization. But the third body also carries a great danger, and that is the trap of endless doubt and indecision. The intellect is an excellent servant, but a terrible master. It loves to analyze, to dissect, and to argue, but it can never arrive at a living decision. A man who lives entirely in his thoughts becomes paralyzed by skepticism. He goes on thinking and thinking, but he never takes a step into the unknown. The spiritual transformation of this third chakra happens when doubt is allowed to reach its absolute crescendo. You must pass through thoughts so deeply that you begin to doubt itself. When your logic exhausts itself, it commits a beautiful suicide, and from those ashes, open-eyed trust and deep discrimination are born. This trust is not the blind faith of an ignorant person who is simply afraid to think. It is the luminous clarity of a seer who has transcended the wheel of thoughts and arrived at the silent center of direct knowing. From this state of mental clarity, you enter into the fourth body, the mental or psychic body, which operates through the Anahat chakra, the heart center. This fourth plane is a realm of magnificent wonders and deep mysteries. The natural characteristics of the fourth body are imagination and dreaming. The mind is constantly spinning daydreams, creating fantasies, and projecting its desires into the future. But when the energy of the fourth chakra is awakened through deep meditation, your imagination is transformed into iron determination, and your dreams become objective psychic visions. A person whose fourth body is active can see and hear things without the use of their physical sense organs. The limitations of time and space begin to fade away. Such a person can look through solid walls, read the hidden thoughts of another, and even project their consciousness across vast distances. This is the plane where all the extraordinary psychic faculties, the siddhis mentioned in the ancient scriptures of yoga, become alive. But I must warn you with all my heart, the fourth body is the most hazardous territory on the spiritual journey. It is the place where the greatest deceptions take place. Because everything on this plane is entirely subjective, it is incredibly easy to confuse a mental projection with a spiritual reality. If you enter this fourth chakra with even a hidden trace of ego, with any desire for spiritual power or recognition, your mind will immediately play a trick on you. It will create an imaginary awakening of the Kundalini. It will make you see beautiful lights, smell unearthly fragrances, and hear celestial music, leading you to believe that you have reached the ultimate destination. But you will only be wandering through a beautiful, self-created daydream. The true sign of an authentic Kundalini awakening on this psychic plane is never found in the miraculous stories you tell about your visions, but in the radical transformation of your character. The moment the vital energy truly awakens and ascends through the heart center, the urge for violence completely disappears from your being. You do not have to practice non-violence as a moral discipline. You simply become non-violent because the other is no longer experienced as separate from you. All virtues like innocence, absolute awareness, and freedom from greed become as natural and effortless as your breath. If a person claims that their Kundalini has reached the heart center, yet they are still ruled by jealousy, anger, and sexual obsession, they are simply holding a counterfeit coin. They have fallen into the hypnotic trap of their own fourth body. To understand how this energy transitions from these lower planes into the higher realms, you must understand the mysterious bioelectrical blueprint that governs our existence. Up to the fourth body, everything within the individual is split into a strict duality of positive and negative, male and female forces. If a person has a physical body that is male, their second etheric body is female. Their third astral body is male, and their fourth psychic body is female. In a woman, this energetic structure is completely reversed. Her physical body is negative and receptive, but her inner emotional body is a powerful, aggressive male force. This internal polarity is the hidden secret behind the complex and often painful dynamics of human relationships. Every man carries an inner woman within himself, and every woman carries an inner man. The worldly search for a romantic partner is simply an unconscious attempt to find an external reflection that matches this internal opposite pole. But because human beings are constantly changing, this external search is almost always a failure, leading to frustration, codependency, and spiritual slavery. True liberation only begins when your outer energy turns completely inward, uniting with your own internal opposite pole. This inner marriage is the real meaning of celibacy or brahmacharya. It is the gathering of all your scattered, dualistic forces into a single upward flowing current of life energy. Because the male physical body is naturally positive and aggressive. It can easily transmit energy, but finds it very difficult to receive it. The female physical body, being negative and receptive, acts like a powerful sponge, beautifully capable of absorbing energy, but unable to transmit it outwardly. This is the biological reason why, throughout human history, the pioneers of religion have almost always been men, while women have been the ones who preserved and protected the flame of spirituality on earth. A woman can receive Shaktipat, the transmission of divine energy, with incredible ease, because receptivity is her very nature. But for a man, receiving energy requires a monumental effort of complete surrender, because his male ego naturally resists being passive. This division of genders, this play of positive and negative electrical currents, rules over your existence with absolute authority throughout the first four bodies. But the moment you transcend the fourth body and step into the fifth, the spiritual body, all duality ends once and for all. The fifth body is the Atma Sarir, the spiritual plane, which operates through the Visuddhi chakra in the throat. This is a realm of absolute non-duality. On this plane, you are neither male nor female. You are simply a pure, unassociated soul. The work of spiritual cultivation changes completely here, because there is no longer any internal opposite force to fight or transform. You have arrived at the threshold of your true nature. The greatest characteristic of a person who has entered the fifth body is absolute wakefulness. Such a person is completely rid of all unconscious sleep. When they go to bed at night, their physical body relaxes into deep slumber, but someone within remains forever alert, witnessing the state of the body, watching the breath, completely untouched by the darkness of unconsciousness. Before entering this fifth plane, we all live our daily lives like somnambulists, walking through the world in a state of deep mechanical hypnosis. We think we are awake because our physical eyes are open, but our minds are constantly dreaming, reacting blindly out of past habits and unconscious conditioning. We make promises we cannot keep. We fall into anger we do not want, and we speak words we immediately regret, simply because there is no conscious master inside the house of our body. We are driven by blind biological impulses and social programming. But on the fifth plane, the Master finally awakens. This is the true meaning of becoming a Buddha. Buddha is not a personal name. It is a description of a state of consciousness. It means one who has shaken off the slumber of countless lives and awakened completely. On this spiritual plane, the tormenting quest for identity, the anxious cry of "Who am I?" vanishes once and for all, because your true spiritual nature becomes an indisputable fact. You no longer need to prove your importance to the world. You no longer seek prestige, wealth, or power to validate your existence, because the false ego has died, leaving behind only the pure, blissful feeling of I-amness. Yet, you must know that even this magnificent spiritual body carries its own unique and subtle trap. The bliss experienced on the fifth plane is so profound, so overwhelming, and so intensely fulfilling that it becomes the most formidable barrier for a spiritual seeker. Up to the fourth body, the obstacles you encountered were made of pain, anxiety, fear, and suffering, which were relatively easy to leave behind because the mind naturally wants to escape misery. But on the fifth plane, you enter a radiant paradise of supreme joy and self-realization. It is incredibly difficult to leave this temple of bliss and continue the journey into the ultimate unknown. Many mystics and spiritual traditions have stopped right here, declaring that self-realization is the final destination of existence, mistakenly believing that the individual soul is the ultimate reality. Standing on the fifth plane, the seeker still clings to their individual existence, to the refined feeling of I-amness. They have dropped the ego, but they have not yet dropped the self. They see infinite individual souls existing separately from one another in an ocean of bliss. To go further, to reach the cosmic and the absolute void, you must become bored even of your own bliss. You must develop a profound thirst for absolute truth that is greater than your attachment to spiritual joy. You must be willing to take the next dangerous leap, moving from freedom from suffering into total freedom from the self. If your quest is truly for the ultimate truth and not just for a comfortable escape from suffering, you cannot remain stuck in the beautiful garden of the fifth body. You must begin to ask a deeper question. From what ocean has this wave that I am arisen? Where are the absolute roots of my existence? This inquiry will force you to break through the barrier of bliss and step into the sixth body, the Brahma Sarish, which is the cosmic body, operating through the Agya Chakra located between the eyebrows. The moment you transcend the fifth plane, the refined feeling of amness dissolves completely. There is no longer any sense of an individual self, no longer any division between me and the universe. On the sixth plane, only existence remains. This is the realm of Tathata, absolute suchness, pure cosmic consciousness. Standing on this plane, a meditator declares with absolute authority, Aham Brahmasmi. I am the cosmic reality. The drop has realized that it is the entire ocean. There is no longer any individual I. There is only the vast, boundless, beginningless, and endless expanse of cosmic being. This sixth plane is so enormous, so boundless, that many seekers remain stuck here for millions of births. Because when you have become one with the entire cosmos, when you are the stars, the oceans, the mountains, and the infinite space itself, what more is there to seek? What barrier is left to cross? There seems to be nowhere left to go, because you have covered everything. The cosmic body is the ultimate boundary of existence, the last barrier in the quest of the seeker. But even this realization of cosmic being is only half the story. You have known what it is to be the all, but you have not yet known what it is not to be. You have realized absolute being, but absolute non-being still remains unknown. You have seen the ultimate light, but the ultimate boundless darkness has yet to be explored. To know the whole truth of existence, you must know both sides of the coin, being and non-being, existence and non-existence. Perfection in knowledge is only achieved when the whole is known, and the whole includes the void. Therefore, the final jump takes you from the sixth body into the seventh body, the Nirvana Sarir, which is the nirvanic body, the bodiless body. Its corresponding center is the Sahasrar, the 1,000-petaled lotus at the crown of the head. About this seventh plane, nothing can be said. Language breaks down completely. Up to the fifth body, everything can be explained with scientific precision. On the sixth plane, language becomes ambiguous and poetic, a matter of hints and symbols. But on the seventh plane, the pointing finger breaks and all hints disappear, because the knower himself is eliminated. Nirvana literally means the extinction of the flame. When a lamp runs out of oil, the flame simply dies out. If someone asks, "Where has the flame gone now? Where is its location?" the question itself is absurd. The flame has not gone anywhere, it has simply ceased to be. It has entered into non-being. The seventh plane is this ultimate, beautiful death. It is the extinction of both the I and the am. You are no longer an individual, and you are no longer the cosmos. You are simply an absolute void, a perfect nothingness. In this void, light and darkness, life and death, being and non-being occur together in absolute harmony. This is the ultimate attainment, the home from which we never return. To reach this ultimate stage, you must allow your entire life force to be mobilized through the scientific application of our meditation methods. Do not live a lukewarm life, always staying in the middle of the ladder. There is nothing more tragic than a person who stops halfway up the spiritual ladder, neither fully enjoying the material world of the lower chakras, nor entering the divine world of the higher planes. Such a person lives in a constant hell of inner conflict and indecision. Be total in your intensity. When you engage in deep, chaotic breathing, let your entire body become a tempest, a raging cyclone of energy. Let the carbon and oxygen ratio within your blood alter completely, electrifying your nervous system and hitting the resting serpent at the base of your spine with absolute force. And when the energy wakes up and shakes your physical roots, let go of your body completely. Do not try to manage it. Do not try to remain civilized or respectable. Respectability is a psychological straitjacket that keeps your soul imprisoned in sleep. If your body wants to dance, dance with absolute madness. If it wants to weep, let your tears wash away the ancient filth of your repressions. If it wants to scream, let your voice resound with the raw power of nature. You must create a magnificent storm on the surface so that the deepest depths of your silent being can be revealed. As this storm of physical and emotional catharsis reaches its absolute peak, you must immediately transition into the third stage of our methods, turning your entire gathered energy into a powerful inner weapon. With every breath, with every beat of your heart, you must hammer your consciousness with the question, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? This is not an intellectual puzzle that you can answer with words or scriptural definitions. It is an existential spade meant to dig through the heavy layers of your mind. You must ask this question with such absolute intensity that it becomes a matter of life and death. Let the question turn into a sharp arrow that penetrates deep into your unconsciousness, cutting through your false masks, your social titles, and your psychological illusions. You must become so completely identified with this inquiry that you are no longer a person asking a question. You become the question itself. Let your body shake, let your breath drive fast, and let the question, "Who am I?" reverberate through every cell of your being, exhausting your mental mechanism until the mind has nothing more to say. It is only when you have completely exhausted your entire energy through this total exertion that you can enter into the fourth stage, the stage of absolute relaxation and rest. This relaxation is not a passive lethargy, it is a live, vibrant silence born out of the star. When I say to drop everything, you must drop every effort instantly, as if you have suddenly dropped dead. Let your body lie on the earth like a fallen log, completely unmoving, completely relaxed. Do not breathe deeply, do not ask any questions, do not do anything at all. Cease to be a doer. For 10 minutes become an absolute vacuum, a perfect void. Listen to the distant roar of the sea, the gentle murmur of the wind passing through the pine trees, and the sweet song of the birds, without any translation or judgment. Just remain as a pure mirror, a silent witness to everything that is. It is in this moment of absolute non-doing emptiness that the guest arrives. When you are completely absent, the divine flows into you. You do not have to pull it, you do not have to seek it. Your very emptiness becomes an irresistible invitation for the cosmic grace to descend. We must remember that this inner journey is an individual pilgrimage. You have to walk it completely alone. No one can walk it for you, and you cannot carry any baggage with you. You cannot take your wealth, your family, your name, or your social prestige through the door of meditation, because the door is so narrow that it can only accommodate you in your absolute naked illness. It is a journey of the alone to the alone. Therefore, for the days that we are engaged in this inner labor, you must stop all your gossiping and chatterings. Speak only when it is absolutely necessary, using as few words as possible, conserving every ounce of your energy for the inner explosion. Avoid human faces if they stir up past thoughts and desires in your mind. Look at the clouds, watch the vast ocean, and look at the trees. They are completely sahaj, natural and spontaneous, and they will help you to return to your own nature. Stop all your grumbling and complaining about the petty discomforts of the material world. A mind that is constantly complaining about food, weather, or mosquitoes is a restless, superficial mind that can never descend into the depths of meditation. Accept everything exactly as it is, with total gratitude. If there is discomfort, let it be. Look at it with a smile. This total acceptance, this absolute absence of grudging, will instantly release your mind from the clutches of the ego, bringing a profound peace that you have never known. You must realize that you are sitting on a magnificent gold mine within your own being. Yet you live like a beggar, asking for petty pleasures from the outside world. All your life you have been looking for diamonds in the pebbles of material success. And every time you achieved your ambitions, you were left feeling empty and unfulfilled. This inner emptiness is your greatest blessing. It is the silent proof that nothing of this material world can ever satisfy your immortal soul. The emptiness is a calling from the beyond, a reminder that your true home is not here on the surface, but in the boundless ocean of divine consciousness. So do not turn back when the journey becomes difficult or when your old habits try to frighten you. Many seekers dig the mountain of their being for years, and just when they are 1 foot away from the hidden gold mine, they panic and turn back, falling into their old ruts of sleep and illusion. Gather your total courage. Let the old structures of your mind be completely shattered. If you are afraid of being drowned in this divine ocean, you will remain a hard, dead seed forever. But if you have the supreme courage to die to your past, to lose your separate identity, you will suddenly find that you have not lost anything at all. The moment the drop disappears into the ocean, it becomes the ocean itself. This is the miracle of meditation. It is a death that leads to resurrection, a total wiping out of your limitations so that you can inherit the infinite glory of the absolute whole. When the life force begins to travel upward through this method, you will experience a dramatic shift in your internal energy currents. The energy will feel hot like a flaming fire, burning away the old dross of your conditionings, and at the exact same time, it will feel cool like a fresh morning breeze, soothing the ancient wounds of your heart. It will feel like a sharp prick of thorns, shattering your psychological comfort zones, and simultaneously, it will feel as soft as a blooming lotus, wrapping your entire being in an exquisite, unearthly fragrance. You must remain completely unshakable in the face of these new experiences. Do not discuss your inner phenomena with others because they do not have the eyes to see what is happening to you. They will laugh at your ecstasy, they will call your dance madness, and their negative suggestions will work as heavy rocks obstructing your progress. Discuss your experiences only with me, or keep them locked in the secret sanctuary of your heart, allowing the energy to gather momentum until it reaches the final crescendo. The decisive moment is at hand. The world is moving at a frantic pace towards absolute materialism and spiritual unconsciousness, and a few isolated seekers will no longer be enough to save humanity from self-destruction. A massive global movement of spiritual awakening is required, where hundreds of thousands of people are willing to step out of their mechanical sleep and reclaim their divine heritage. You can become the nucleus of this great spiritual explosion if you take one step towards your true nature. The entire universe will take 100 steps towards you, flooding your life with a light and bliss that transcend all human understanding. Take this meditation deep into your daily life. Dedicate 1 hour every day to this inner labor. Shut yourself in a room, let go of all your masks, and let the divine current transform you from a mechanical puppet into a living, radiant manifestation of the absolute whole. Really, the desire to complete something, and that is what goads us on. Therefore, as long as one's desires are there, it is not possible to lose one's soul, because you still have a profound use for it. How can a person whose desires are completely intact choose to lose his soul? It is impossible. Of course, if your desires disappear entirely, you become ready to lose the soul too, because now you have no further use for this separate container. When there is nothing left to achieve, when there is no house to build, no ambition to fulfill, and no projection into tomorrow, why hold on to the boundaries of the self? The vessel becomes irrelevant when the thirst itself has been transformed into something cosmic. You must see that this desire to do is the root of the great illusion that holds you captive. When you feel that you are the one doing, you are living inside a deep mechanical dream. You walk, you talk, you earn money, and you even sit in meditation, thinking that you are the master of your actions. But so long as an individual feels that he is the doer, the true divine energy cannot operate through him. The day you realize that you are no more, that you are not the doer, your life becomes a natural happening. It is like the wind blowing through the trees. are the waves of the ocean rushing toward the seashore. If you ask the winds if they are blowing, they will say that they are simply being blown. If you ask the trees if they are growing, they will tell you that they are being grown by a force far greater than themselves. These are the pure acts of existence. But man, in his immense ignorance, stands apart and declares that he is the manager of his destiny. It is here in this very thought that your ego takes over and encloses you in a heavy prison. Even when you read scriptures that tell you everything is happening according to the divine will, your understanding remains completely superficial. It is not skin deep. You read a book and your intellect agrees, so you go about saying that you are not the doer, that God is doing everything through you. But this is just another face of the same old ego. Now the ego feels very pious, very religious, saying, "Look at me, I am just an instrument in the hands of the divine." But let someone give you a hard knock, let someone insult you or step on your toes, and your artificial understanding will vanish in a single second. You will forget all your spiritual philosophy. Your face will turn red with rage, and you will scream, "How dare you treat me this way? Don't you know who I am?" The divine will immediately take leave of you, and your old aggressive I comes back to occupy its throne. I am reminded of a monk who spent 30 long years in the absolute solitude of the Himalayan mountains. He lived far away from human society, where there was no one to disturb him, no one to insult him, and no one to challenge his importance. Because he was completely alone, he forgot his ego entirely. You must understand this mechanism. For the ego to live, the other is absolutely necessary. The ego cannot survive in a vacuum. It needs a you to sustain its own I. When you look into the eyes of another person with a sense of arrogance or competition, your ego comes alive. But in the silence of the high mountains, there was no other. There was no one to praise the monk and no one to criticize him. So his ego went into a state of deep dormancy, and he genuinely believed that he had become completely egoless, that his mind had attained perfect stillness. Eventually, word of his great holiness reached the people living down in the plains. A group of devotees traveled up the mountain and begged him to visit their valley, where a massive religious fair was being organized. They told him that the ordinary people could not climb to such dangerous heights, and it would be an act of great compassion if he would come down to give them his darshan. The monk, thinking that his ego was completely dead and that nothing could disturb his inner peace anymore, agreed to go with them. He came down from the mountains and entered the crowded valley. The fair was packed with thousands of people moving back and forth, completely unaware of who the monk was. As he walked through the dense crowds, a stranger accidentally stepped on his toes with heavy shoes. The moment those shoes trod on his feet, a tremendous explosion of rage occurred inside the monk. He completely forgot his 30 years of meditation, his holiness, and his spiritual quietness. He grabbed the stranger by the neck and yelled at the top of his voice, "Don't you know who I am?" In a single second, the entire illusion of his egolessness was shattered like glass. The mountains, the peace, the emptiness, and the beautiful idea that he was one with the divine vanished into thin air. He stood there in the middle of the crowded marketplace, clutching a stranger's throat, completely possessed by animal fury. Then all of a sudden, a flash of awareness came to him, and he looked at his hands in absolute horror. He realized that his 30 years in the mountains had changed nothing. The ego had not disappeared. It had merely been protected from the friction of life. It was waiting in ambush, completely intact, ready to spring forward the moment a challenge appeared. This is what happens when you try to find peace by running away from the world. True calmness cannot be found by hiding in a cave, because a cave provides no mirrors. It can only be tested and realized in the fire of the marketplace, where people are constantly stepping on your toes, insulting you, and challenging your prestige. If you can remain a silent witness in the middle of the crowd, if you can watch your anger rise and dissolve without becoming identified with it, then only have you attained to true naturalness, to Sahaj Yoga. Otherwise, your spirituality is just a temporary makeup, a false mask that will crack the moment life touches you with reality. To go deep into this exploration, you must look closely at the relationship between your physical body and your breath. Breath is the most mysterious and miraculous element in your living structure. It is the thin, invisible thread that binds your immortal soul to your material body. And it is precisely at this crossroads, at the meeting point of the physical and the spiritual, where the primal energy known as Kundalini resides. Because it sits exactly at this junction, this energy has two opposite directions in which it can move. When this life force flows downward toward the physical body and the outer world of matter, it manifests as sexual desire. When it changes its course and begins to flow upward toward the inner world of the soul, it becomes Kundalini awakening. Sex is a descending energy, a movement toward physical discharge and reproduction. Kundalini is an ascending energy, a movement toward spiritual resurrection and cosmic expansion. But the central engine that drives this energy in either direction is your breathing. Have you ever noticed that your breath changes its rhythm completely whenever you are filled with desire, anger, or passion? You cannot keep your breathing quiet and tranquil when you are sexually excited. The moment your biological centers are aroused, your breathing immediately becomes rapid, shallow, and chaotic. Why? Because without the intense friction of fast breathing, the descending sex energy cannot move. It requires the mechanical stimulation of the breath to travel down to the lowest chakra. In the exact same way, the ultimate explosion of samadhi is impossible unless the ascending energy is hit and stimulated by a specific intense breathing pattern. The fuel is the same. It is only a matter of which direction the current is moving. If you want to understand these secrets practically, try a simple experiment in your daily life. The next time your mind is gripped by an intense wave of sexual desire or a sudden fit of rage, do not fight with your thoughts. Do not try to suppress the emotion or lecture yourself on morality. Simply bring your entire attention to your breathing. Intentionally slow down the pace of your breath. Make it deep, steady, and completely relaxed. Breathe so gently that even a feather placed near your nose would not move, and you will be filled with wonder. The moment your breathing becomes tranquil, your sexual excitement or your anger will instantly drop and disappear. They cannot remain inside you for a single moment without the support of a rapid, excited breath. It is an absolute law of your bioelectrical mechanism. Anger and lust are completely dependent on a chaotic breath. They cannot survive in an atmosphere of rhythmic calmness. Conversely, when you sit for meditation and your heart is burning with an authentic thirst to know the divine, you must use the breath as a powerful hammer to strike the sleeping serpent at the base of your spine. When you accelerate your breathing, making it fast, deep, and chaotic, you are creating a monumental friction inside your physical structure. This intense breathing acts like a massive blow directly hitting the Mooladhara chakra, the biological pool where your life force lies asleep. As you continue to hammer this center with all your might, your experience will deepen so much that even with closed eyes you will be able to see the exact spot where the energy is being struck. But because your body has been habituated for millions of lives to moving only in the downward direction of physical gratification, a strange thing often happens in the initial stages of this deep breathing. When you begin to hammer the reservoir of energy, you may suddenly feel a strong surge of sexual arousal. Many seekers, both men and women, get highly frightened by this. They come to me and say, "Osho, we came here to meditate, to find God. But the moment we breathe fast and deep, our sex center gets intensely stimulated. What is wrong with us?" I tell them that nothing is wrong at all. It is a completely natural and mechanical reaction of the body. Your body does not know anything about spiritual enlightenment. It is only acquainted with the path of sex. For countless lives, whenever your vital energy was stimulated by rapid breathing, it always flowed downward into the familiar channel of sexual reproduction. So today, when you generate a vast amount of energy through chaotic breathing, the body naturally assumes that you are preparing for a sexual act, and it immediately directs the current along the old, well-worn track. You do not have to be afraid of this. It is just the energy waking up at the starting line. If you do not create a mental fixation around it, if you simply continue to breathe deeply, watchfully, and with total intensity, the energy will soon fill the sex channel to its absolute capacity. It will overflow, and because it can no longer go down, it will naturally begin its upward journey along the spine, breaking through the higher centers of your consciousness. This physical hammering through chaotic breathing is only one half of the work. The other half must happen from the psychological direction. While the breath hits the Kundalini from the physical plane, the question, "Who am I?" acts as a profound mental spade that strikes the energy from the psychological plane. To understand how a thought can hit a physical center, you must observe the power of your mind. If you close your eyes right now and project a vivid, detailed imagination of a sexual nature, your physical body will immediately respond. Your heartbeat will quicken, and your sex center will be physically stimulated. Even though there is no real object in front of you, the thought alone has touched the physical gland from within. In fact, the attack of imagination is far more powerful than the frontal encounter with a physical reality, because imagination touches your inner nerve centers directly, while a physical object can only touch you from the outside. If a simple thought can activate your sex center so intensely. It means that every specific line of thought has a corresponding center inside your body that it hits. When you ask the question, "Who am I?" you are using your mind energy to strike a completely uncultivated center within your inner geography. All your life you have asked questions that are directed outwards. You ask, "Who is he? Who is she? What is this object?" Your curiosity has always been focused on the periphery, on the other. Because your thoughts have always traveled outward, they have only stimulated those centers that connect you to the external world of matter. But you have never turned the arrow of inquiry completely inwards. You have never sat down in absolute seriousness and demanded of yourself, "Who am I?" Because this question is an entirely unasked inquiry. It doesn't touch any of your routine active centers. It bypasses the intellect, it bypasses the emotional center, and it goes straight to the very root of your existence. It hits the Kundalini. Who am I is not a philosophical riddle that you are supposed to answer with words or scriptural definitions. If your mind answers, "I am the soul, I am a portion of the divine, I am Brahman," know well that this is a completely false, borrowed answer given by your memory. It is just words. The true answer to this question cannot be spoken. It is an existential realization. The question is simply a tool, a sharp weapon meant to cut through the thick layers of your false identities. You must ask it with such total intensity that your entire mind is gripped by a single burning curiosity. Let your deep breathing continue. Let your body shake and move, and from the very center of your being, let the question, "Who am I?" reverberate like a thunderbolt. But you must be aware of the deceptive nature of your own mind layers. I have observed many seekers who work very hard, putting their whole strength into the inquiry. They scream from the upper layer of their consciousness, "Who am I? Who am I?" But because their minds are deeply fragmented, another hidden layer immediately pops up from within and whispers a cynical retort. What will it do? What is the use of this constant asking? You are just wasting your time. Nothing is going to happen. Better keep quiet. This internal conflict is the great obstruction. While one part of you is trying to dig the well, another part is busy filling it back up with soil. You must gather your energy so completely that this internal division is utterly burnt away. Pour your last drop of willpower into the question until only the inquiry remains. When there are no longer two voices inside you, when you become so thoroughly single-minded that you are the question itself, then it will sink into your depths like a sharp arrow. It will pierce the reservoir of your unconsciousness, and the true answer will sprout forth instantly from your own inner depths. You will not have to wait for it, even for a single second. The knowledge is already there, waiting to be claimed. As the Kundalini energy wakes up under the dual impact of chaotic breathing and this intense internal inquiry, it begins to ascend through the spine, activating the different halting places that we call chakras. These centers are the massive vaults where the entire memory of your evolutionary past is stored. You are not a new creation. You have been traveling through this universe for millions of ages. You have passed through the life of a stone, a tree, a fish, an insect, and a bird before arriving at this human form. All those memories, the deep biological experiences of your past incarnations, are lying strewn along the path of the Kundalini. When the rising energy activates these dormant vaults, extraordinary and bizarre psychic phenomena will begin to happen to you. You may suddenly look at a tree standing in the garden, and if the energy has touched the specific layer where your past life as a plant is stored, you will instantly experience the tree from its inside. When the rain falls, you will not just watch it from your window. You will feel the absolute joy of the rain the way the tree feels it, absorbing the water through its roots and stretching its leaves toward the heavens. You will go through the identical experience of the wind and the storm. If the energy touches the layer where your memory as a bird is deposited, your entire body may begin to vibrate with a strange, hypersensitive alertness. There is a common bird in Japan that can perceive the extremely subtle tremors of an impending earthquake a full 24 hours before it occurs, leaving the village completely before any human instrument can detect the danger. When that specific biological memory awakens inside you in meditation, your nervous system will become so refined that you will feel the deep, invisible movements of the earth and the cosmos. You will begin to see magnificent colors that do not exist on the outer spectrum of light, and you will hear an unearthly, primordial sound that echoes through the silence of your heart. In those moments of intense psychic opening, you may appear completely mad to an outside spectator. You may sit quietly in a room and suddenly burst into a ringing laugh because you are witnessing an inner beauty that others cannot see. Or you may suddenly begin to weep and scream with intense agony while everyone around you is laughing because you have touched a layer of cosmic consciousness that is completely hidden from them. This is why I always advise you never to discuss your meditative experiences with ordinary people. They do not have the eyes to understand, and they will immediately label you as a mental case, a hysterical lunatic. Their negative suggestions will create a heavy doubt in your mind, freezing the flow of your energy. To make this journey swifter and safer, the method of Shaktipat can be utilized as a powerful external aid. Shaktipat means the transmission of the divine energy through the medium of another person. It is an intentional, managed technique where a person who has already reached a state of complete egolessness functions as a regulated conductor for the cosmic force. Think of it like this: the lightning that flashes across the sky during a heavy rainstorm is a vast, unmanaged current of raw electricity. It follows no human regulations. It can strike a house and burn it to ashes in a second. But the electric current that flows through the wire in your house and lights up a bulb is a managed, regulated energy. The hand of man is visible behind it, making it safe for you to sit under its light and read a book. Shaktipat is like the electric bulb, where an enlightened person functions as the medium. Divine grace is the unhindered lightning in the sky that comes directly from the beyond without any medium. If the vast, unlimited energy of cosmic grace suddenly descends on an immature person who is completely unprepared, there is every possibility of his breaking down or becoming completely insane. The human body-mind mechanism has its strict limitations. If 1,000,000 volts of electricity are suddenly forced through a delicate wire that is only meant to hold 5 volts, the wire will immediately burn out and fuse. It is exactly like a man who has been locked away in a dark underground dungeon for 40 years and is suddenly brought out into the brilliant glare of the noonday sun. The sunlight is not his enemy. The sun is completely impartial. But because his eyes are only accustomed to the darkness, the intense glare will be unbearable and destructive for him. It will blind him completely, turning a magnificent blessing into a terrible disaster. This is why a medium is so valuable in the initial phases of your spiritual awakening. When the divine energy passes through a well-matured medium who is familiar with its workings, it becomes gentle, mild, and regulated. The medium can sense your internal capacity from his own depths and he allows only that specific amount of energy to flow into you, which your nerves can safely contain. The chances of a spiritual accident are reduced to almost zero. But you must remember with absolute clarity, the medium is merely a vehicle, a wire, an electric bulb. He is never the primal source of this energy. If a person declares arrogance, saying, I am doing Saktipat, I am transmitting my energy into you, know well that he is a complete phony, a victim of deep delusion. It would be just like the electric bulb declaring that it is the creator of the light, because the light happens to be emitted through its glass. The light belongs to the invisible current. The bulb is just an instrument. The definition of a true Sadguru, a perfect master, is one who never becomes a guru in his own consciousness. There is no greater disqualification for mastership than the claim of being a guru, because that claim proves the heavy presence of the ego, and that is exceedingly dangerous. When a person has reached a state of absolute void, where his individual identity has completely disappeared, he becomes a pure medium. He doesn't become a master in reference to you. He simply becomes an extended hand of the divine in relationship to the universal being. When he speaks using the word I, he does not mean his separate ego, but the supreme self that resides in the center of all. This is why Krishna could say to Arjuna in the middle of the battlefield, leave all your duties, leave all else, and surrender unto me alone. For thousands of years, scholars and pundits have puzzled over this statement, thinking that Krishna must have been a highly egoistic man to demand such absolute surrender. But they are completely mistaken. They are looking at his words through their own points of view, from where they are invariably deluded. Krishna could say it this way simply because he was no longer an ego. His separate self was completely dead. His I was just an outstretched hand of the Absolute, and it was the divine itself standing behind him, saying, surrender unto me, the only one. Those words, the only one, are absolutely priceless. The separate ego can never be the only one. It is always divided into many parts. Krishna was speaking from that profound space of the center, where only the one exists, free from all delusion. Though Saktipat and grace appear to be completely contrary at the periphery, they are beautifully identical at the center. I am always in favor of that profound space where it becomes impossible to distinguish between Saktipat and grace. When your patience becomes boundless, when your waiting turns into an unwavering devotion, your internal capacity develops so much that Shaktipat happens to you without any physical medium. The electricity of your house becomes like the unhindered natural lightning in the sky, merging completely into the infinite cosmic energy. Then it is no longer an induced state, it is a direct descent of the divine, and it happens without any mishap. For this explosion to take place, the friction of two distinct energies is absolutely necessary. Explosion can never happen with only one energy. If it were possible, it would have happened long ago, and you would not be sitting here in darkness. Think of it like this: you have a matchbox in your hand, and you place a matchstick very close to it. They can lie next to each other for an eternity, separated only by a quarter of a centimeter. But no flame will ever result. The distance may be infinitesimal, but as long as they are separate, the fire remains hidden and unmanifested within both of them. For that magnificent flash of fire to occur, the friction of the two is absolutely mandatory. You must strike the matchstick against the box with force, and only then will you get the flame. The sleeping energy within your individual structure must rise all the way up the ladder of the spine to the Sahasrara chakra, which is the topmost rung. It is only at this specific point, at the crown of your head, that the union, the final friction with the infinite cosmic energy is possible. No union can happen anywhere else along the ladder. It is exactly as if all the doors and windows of your house are tightly closed, while the brilliant sun is shining outside in full glory. The sunlight stays right outside your door, waiting. You may move inside your house, walking from one room to another, and you may even come right up to the closed door, but you will still remain in darkness. You will never meet the light of the sun until the door is thrown open. The Sahasrara chakra is this ultimate door where divine grace forever awaits us. The cosmic is always standing at this threshold, waiting for you. It is you who are missing from the door. You are hiding in some dark, unconscious room of your lower chakras. You must travel up the ladder. You must come to the door, and the moment the door opens, the union will take place in the form of a magnificent explosion. And it is called an explosion because in that very moment you will completely disappear. You will no longer be what you were behind the closed door. The matchstick is entirely burned and turned to ashes in the explosion, merging into the formless fire. All that you considered to be yours, your separate name, your small identity, your personal history, will be lost forever. Only the one who was waiting outside the door will remain, and you will become an indivisible part of that absolute vastness. This cannot be done by you alone, through your separate egoistic willpower. You must reach the ultimate boundary where you are ready to be completely erased, meeting the cosmic infinity that awaits you. The boundaries of your Kundalini extend from the lowest sex center to the topmost center at the head. We are always intensely aware of our face and our head, because the head is the very limit of our physical identity. It is easy to look at your hand or your foot and say, I am not this hand, I am not this foot. But to look into a mirror and conceive that I am not this face is an immensely difficult task. The intellect sits very close to the Sahasrara chakra, and man is ready to lose everything in this world, but he is never ready to part with his intellect. Socrates was once asked if he would prefer to be a dissatisfied, discontented Socrates or a completely satisfied, contented pig. Socrates replied without a moment's hesitation, saying, I would prefer to be a discontented Socrates than a contented pig, because the pig has no knowledge whatsoever of his contentment, while a dissatisfied Socrates will at least be fully conscious of his dissatisfaction. This means that man clings to his intellect to the very last, even if it brings him nothing but misery and tension. Rightly speaking, you have two frontiers. One is the sex center, below which the world of blind nature begins. At the plane of sex, there is no difference between human beings, animals, birds, and trees. It is the ultimate limit for the animal kingdom, but for man, it is merely the first step, the starting line. When your life is entirely based in the sex center, you are living on the animal plane. Your other frontier is the intellect, near the top of the head, beyond which lies the divine plane. Beyond that point, you are no longer yourself, you are the divine. Your entire energy moves back and forth between these two frontier lines, because 99% of humanity has its vital energy stored and asleep near the sex center. 99% of human thoughts, dreams, and activities revolve around this lower reservoir. No matter how much sophisticated culture you display on the surface, no matter what false pretext your society invents, you live around the sex center. If a man works hard to earn money, deep down it is for sex. If he builds a magnificent mansion, it is for sex. If he fights for political prestige, it is for sex. At the very root of your worldly ambitions, you will always find the drive of sex. Those who understood the map of human consciousness deeply talked of only two true goals in life: sex and liberation. The other two popular goals, wealth and religion, are not goals at all. They are merely the means. Wealth is a resource to achieve sexual satisfaction. Therefore, the more hypersexual an era becomes, the more wealth-oriented it will naturally be. On the other hand, the more an age is in search of true liberation, the more deeply it will thirst for religion. Religion is just a means to achieve liberation, as wealth is a means to achieve sex. So there are only two true goals, because we have only two frontiers. And the tragedy of human existence is that between these two extremes, you cannot find a resting place. You cannot stop anywhere. Many people land themselves in a state of terrible inner predicament because they have no true desire for liberation. Yet, for some moralistic reason, they have become antagonistic towards sex. They force themselves to stay away from the sex center, but they do not move anywhere near the center of liberation. They fall into a state of absolute doubt, uncertainty, and vacuum. They linger halfway up the ladder. And to stay halfway up a ladder is a completely meaningless and painful hell. A ladder is not a house to live in. It is only meant for crossing over from one end to the other. Either go up to the top or come down to the ground. But to hang in the middle is to turn your life into a useless tension. The spine is this very ladder, and each vertebra is a step. If the Kundalini energy remains at the lowest center, it is bound to explode in the form of sexual discharge. If it travels all the way up to the highest center, it will explode in the form of samadhi. Both are explosions. Both require the participation of an other. But while in sex, the other can be an imaginary person, in samadhi, the other is the absolute infinite reality. The path of devotion or bhakti tried to use the power of imagination to create a meeting with God in the head, but it was not truly possible. You can only project in your imagination that which you have already experienced in your physical reality. A man can dream of sexual pleasure because he has tasted it in his waking state. But a blind man cannot dream of light because he has never known it. Since you have never experienced the ultimate explosion of samadhi, your imagination cannot work here. It cannot project what is completely unknown to you. You cannot project God. Therefore, you will actually have to travel within, step by step, leaving behind all your mental concepts and fantasies. You must allow your energy to rise to the Sahasrara chakra, where the buds of your inner potential can finally blossom. When a flower opens in the rays of the morning sun, it becomes completely vulnerable, completely open to the sky. The awakening of the Sahasrara is this identical flowering. 1,000 flower buds bloom within your head, all of a sudden, opening upwards to receive the infinite current of the divine. In the sex experience, the flower of energy is felt to be hanging downwards, joining you to the lower realm of nature. In samadhi, the petals bloom upwards, opening a door through which the cosmic force enters your being to turn you into a complete void. You must prepare yourself for this ultimate, beautiful explosion, letting go of all your attachments, all your fears, and all your half-hearted compromises until you are ready to stand completely naked and alone at the magnificent door of the Absolute. The journey across these 7 inner bodies is deeply tied to a rhythmic cycle of time that repeats every 7 years in a human life. In Search of the Miraculous, Volume 2 explicitly defines how the first 7 years of your existence are solely for the development of the gross physical body, while the remaining subtle bodies exist only as dormant seeds within you. If a person stagnates at this first stage, their growth stops completely, and they live out their days no different from animals, entirely ruled by their physical needs and the sensations of their taste buds. In the next 7 years, from the age of 7 to 14, the etheric body matures, bringing a massive wave of emotional growth that reaches its peak at puberty. Then from 14 to 21, the astral body unfolds, bringing the maturity of the intellect, logic and reasoning. This is why all over the world, society grants the right to vote or holds a person legally responsible for their actions only after they cross this threshold of 21 years. But the tragedy is that the vast majority of humanity stops right here. Their intellects become mature, but their higher bodies remain completely asleep for the rest of their lives. If you are to awaken your true potential, you must enter into the development of the fourth body, the psychic body, which naturally matures between the ages of 21 and 28. This is the plane of the psyche, which carries extraordinary and wonderful experiences like hypnotism, telepathy, clairvoyance, and astral projection. On this plane, the limitations of physical space and time no longer have absolute power over you. You can read the hidden thoughts of another person or project your own consciousness across vast distances without any physical medium. But because this fourth plane is entirely subjective, it is full of immense deceptions and extreme hazards. Before this plane, the world you experience is objective. If there is a rupee in my hand, you can see it, I can see it, and 50 other people can see it together. It can be verified by external rules of validity. But the moment you enter the subjective world of the fourth body, you are completely alone. No one else can act as a witness to your inner thoughts, your dreams, or your visions. Because of this complete lack of external validation, a person can easily deceive themselves and others without even being aware of it. They can imagine that their Kundalini is rising, that their chakras are fully open, and their mind will happily cooperate with this illusion, creating a false psychic reality that keeps them trapped in a beautifully decorated daydream. This is why, throughout human history, society has always been terrified of the fourth body. Those who discovered the faculties of the psyche were often slandered, condemned, and hunted down as dangerous heretics. Hundreds of women were branded as witches and burned alive in Europe simply because they could use the natural faculties of their fourth body. Hundreds of seekers who practiced Tantra were murdered in India because they knew secrets that appeared terrifying to the mechanical world of ordinary human beings. They could look into your mind. They could tell you exactly what objects were hidden inside your house without ever stepping across your doorstep. And this invisible power made the masses deeply uncomfortable. So humanity has always tried its best to stop all inner progress beyond the intellectual boundaries of the third body, preferring the safe, predictable limits of logic to the unpredictable depths of the psyche. But you must understand that these false psychic projections are merely counterfeit coins. And a counterfeit coin can only exist because a genuine coin exists somewhere in reality. The real Kundalini is an entirely different experience altogether. When the vital energy truly awakens on this fourth plane, the validation is never found in the fantastic visions you describe, but in the physical, visible signs of transformation that manifest in your daily behavior. Behavior is the absolute outer criterion of your inner reality. The moment the Kundalini flows authentically into the higher bodies, it becomes chemically and psychologically impossible for you to indulge in any form of violence or intoxication. The mental body is an incredibly delicate, fragile structure, and it gets influenced by chemicals very quickly. When a person truly awakens, their awareness becomes so sharp that their system naturally rejects anything that brings unconsciousness or dullness. Similarly, the urge for violence completely evaporates from your heart. The desire to harm another person can only exist when your vital energy is dormant, trapped in the lower reservoirs of survival and fear. The moment the energy ascends, the other ceases to be experienced as separate from you, and you cannot possibly wish to harm a part of your own cosmic existence. If you still find yourself suppressing anger, if you still have to force yourself to practice non-violence or celibacy through moralistic willpower, know well that your Kundalini has not awakened at all. If a man claims his eyes have been cured of blindness, yet he still fumbles around in the dark, stumbling over stones and feeling his way with a wooden stick, his behavior proves that he cannot see. The stick and the unstable walk are the undisputable traits of his continued blindness. When the inner eye opens authentically, the religious vows of non-violence, non-stealing, non-possession, and absolute awareness become as natural, effortless, and spontaneous as your heartbeat. You do not have to practice them, they follow you like a shadow. To navigate these transformations safely, you must understand the deep bioelectrical differences that exist between man and woman throughout the first four bodies. No positive or negative pole can exist entirely on its own. They are the two mandatory halves of the universal electrical current. If the individual has a male physical body, their first body is positive, aggressive, and active. But right behind this gross physical layer stands their second body, the etheric body, which is entirely female, passive, and receptive. This is why a man can display immense physical strength and aggression in the outside world for a few hours, living like a ferocious lion in his marketplace or his office. But the moment he returns home in the evening, his first body is thoroughly exhausted and demands rest. Then his inner female etheric body moves to the forefront, and this ferocious lion becomes completely passive, melting before a simple woman inside his house. In a woman, this bioelectrical structure is reversed. Her physical body is negative and receptive, which is why she is never naturally aggressive in the realm of sex, and her biological system is designed to patiently receive, hold, and nurture a child for 9 months within her abdomen. But right behind her delicate physical form stands a highly aggressive, powerful male etheric body. This is why a woman's capacity to endure pain, discomfort, and long-term suffering is vastly superior to a man's. If man had to carry children and go through the immense, long-drawn ordeal of childbirth, they would completely freak out. They could not tolerate the prolonged distress because their inner etheric body is frail and delicate. A woman can sit patiently all night long with a crying child, while a man would feel like strangling it because his inner passivity cannot bear the constant disturbance. This unique bioelectrical balance flips again in the third and fourth bodies. In a man, the third astral body is male and the fourth psychic body is female. In a woman, the third is female and the fourth is male. This division of positive and negative, active and passive layers creates the entire play of human attraction and repulsion. But this division adjusts strictly up to the fourth body. The moment you enter the fifth body, the spiritual plane, you transcend all gender completely. There, the Atman is neither male nor female. It is simply pure, non-dual consciousness. Because 99% of human marriages are made entirely through the blind attraction of these first four bodies, without any scientific or spiritual understanding of these inner energetic layers. 99% of marriages are absolute failures. True harmony can only be achieved if there is a perfect identical synchronicity between the inner energy bodies of two individuals. A person who awakens their Kundalini can look clearly into their own inner architecture and make the right choice outwardly. But prior to this, your choice is nothing but a blind shot in the dark. This is why, in ancient times, seekers were strictly required to maintain absolute brahmacharya during the first 25 years of their life, developing their first four bodies through meditation before they ever thought of marriage. If you marry before your intellect and psyche are mature, you are marrying entirely on the animal plane, seeking nothing but a temporary sexual discharge. And the moment your higher bodies begin to wake up, they will naturally rebel against a wrong partnership, leading to the immense psychological divorces and broken relationships that we see in advanced intellectual societies today. This non-development of the higher bodies is the primary reason why humanity lives in a state of absolute psychological slavery, constantly creating dependency through the perverted relationships of power politics. Look at your worldly relationships. The father dominates the son, the husband oppresses the wife manipulates the husband, and friends bind each other with heavy chains of emotional attachment. They call it love, but it is nothing but a political web of control. And the most dangerous form of this slavery happens in the name of spirituality, through the perverted relationship of the traditional guru and disciple. A true seeker must be incredibly alert against this trap. The traditional guru is a claimant. He stands in the marketplace and shouts, "I know, and you do not know. You are ignorant, and I am wise. Therefore you must bow down at my feet and show me absolute gratitude." But I tell you, the very claim of authority, the very assertion of knowledge, is the definitive proof of absolute ignorance. Assertion is nothing but the voice of the ego trying to boost its own morale by gathering a crowd of followers. I am reminded of a story about a cat who somehow found a way to sneak into a grand library. Over many years, she became thoroughly familiar with everything inside that library. She knew exactly which entrance was safe, which exit to use in an emergency, which set of books provided the most comfortable warmth during the freezing winter, and which bindings were cool and refreshing during the hot summer. She knew everything about the geography of the library, and soon word spread across the entire feline world that this cat was completely omniscient and all-knowing Tirthankara. She gathered thousands of devoted cat followers who sat at her feet to listen to her wisdom. But the absolute fact remained that she knew nothing about what was written inside a single book. She only knew how to use the books as a comfortable shield to protect her body from the cold and the heat. There are such all-knowing cats among human gurus too, who know how to seal their ignorance behind massive walls of scriptural words. The moment you question them, they will immediately take refuge behind the Gita, the Quran, or the Ramayana and try to strangle your intelligence with ancient verses. They use the holy books as a protective ornament and a vocational shield against their enemies, but they know no more about the ultimate truth than the cat in the library. They have memorized the words by heart, and this very memory has killed their sense of inner quest, burying them under the illusion of knowledge. A true master, a Sadguru, never creates authority, because authority cannot exist without suppression. He who wields spiritual power is always terrified that you will find out the truth on your own, because the moment you become independent, his power over you evaporates. So he creates a complex political hierarchy of chief disciples and lesser disciples, turning spirituality into a mundane mind game. When I tell you that an event like Shaktipat can happen easily in the presence of an egoless medium, I am not telling you to turn that medium into a guru or to bind yourself to his person. Any tie that binds you is a heavy hindrance, whether it is a chain of iron or a chain of spiritual faith. In fact, a spiritual bond is far more dangerous because it penetrates deeper into your psyche, and you consider it unholy to break it. A seeker must always be completely wary of security. Security is the ultimate web of attachment. The moment you feel that you are safe under the protective wing of a guru, that you no longer have to worry about going astray, because he will carry you across the river of hell in his spiritual boat, you have already lost your way. For a true seeker, there is no safety. Absolute insecurity is his greatest blessing. The more unprotected you are, the more your soul is forced to expand, becoming bold, independent, and completely fearless. Protection only turns you into a spiritual cripple who will depend on the crutches of authority for the rest of your lives. A true master works constantly to shake off your hand from his person, forcing you to stand on your own 2 feet. He is like a milestone on the road. When you walk along a highway, a milestone tells you exactly how many miles you have traveled and how many miles are left to reach your destination. The milestone gives this precise information to every traveler who passes by, yet it never speaks. It never demands your worship, and it never asks you to build a house next to it and become its disciple. If a milestone could speak, it too might become a guru and say, "Where are you going? I have given you knowledge, so now you must stay with me forever." But because the stone is silent, you look at the hinge. You offer your silent gratitude and you continue your journey toward the horizon. Man speaks, therefore his ego gets inflated by the crowd of followers. He demands your indebtedness to boost his own self-importance. But I tell you, he who demands gratitude has absolutely nothing to give you. Take the hint, take the fleeting glimpse from wherever it becomes available and move on immediately. If you get stuck at a resting place, you turn it into a bondage. You must remember that you are in search of truth, not convenience, and the journey toward truth is completely alone. It is a path of total aloneness. There are infinite souls traveling on this road. Some are 2 steps ahead of you, and some are 2 steps behind you. Take advantage of the footsteps of those who have gone ahead, but do not turn it into slavery. Offer your deep gratitude silently to the wind and do not look back. This understanding is absolutely essential if you are to save yourself from the vast spiritual exploitation that happens in the marketplace of religion. Wherever there is a demand, a declaration, or a miraculous claim, there is always exploitation. When a trickster stands before the masses and promises to give you wisdom, to activate your chakras, or to handle your samadhi, he is simply covering his hook with a tasty worm. A fish never eats a sharp hook. It swallows the hook only because it is attracted by the worm wrapped around it. And by the time it realizes that the hook was the main thing and the worm was just a bait, it is already caught and pulled out of the water. Every spiritual trader uses your hidden desires and greeds to trap you. You come to him with a restless mind, claiming you want peace. But if you look deep into your heart, your actual requirement is completely mundane. You want a job for your son? You want to win a pending lawsuit? Or you want your physical illness to be cured? The clever trader of religion immediately senses your greed and says, "Come here. My temple is miraculous. Whoever comes here gets wealth, their business runs well, and their illnesses disappear." And when thousands of desperate people flock to his shop, 10 of them are bound to have their desires fulfilled in the normal statistical course of life's events. These 10 remain behind, spreading loud words of the miracle, while the remaining 990 silently walk away to look for another shop. Slowly, a massive crowd forms around this pseudo-guru, and their testimony becomes his indisputable proof. But the hook is deep inside your flesh. A true medium, an authentically spiritual man, makes absolutely no claims for himself. If you go to him and say, "Because of your presence, a magnificent grace happened to me," he will look at you with innocence and say, "How can it be? I do not even know anything about it. You must be mistaken. It must have happened by the grace of existence, or because your own heart was ready to receive it. Who am I? Where do I come in?" When Jesus embraced a sick man and cured him of his ailments, the man fell at his feet and said, "How can I ever thank you? You have rid me of all my miseries." But Jesus immediately corrected him, saying, "Do not speak thus. Give thanks only where it is due. Who am I, and where do I come in? You and I are not It is the divine behind me who has healed you through your own faith. A man who is completely transparent, a man who is an absolute void, can never exploit you, because he does not own the worm, let alone the hook. Therefore, stop looking for outer supports and get busy developing your own inner bud. The sun is always shining brightly in the heavens. It is forever available. But if your bud is not ready to burst and blossom into a flower, the sunlight is completely useless for you. In existence, no vessel remains empty even for a single moment. The laws of the inner world operate with the exact same precision as the laws of physical science. If you create a perfect vacuum in this room by pumping out all the air, the outside air will immediately rush in from every crack and opening to fill the void. The removal of the old air and the rushing in of the new are not two separate events. They are the two identical sides of the same law. The moment your inner house is completely empty of the ego, the cosmic grace will rush in on its own momentum to fill your vessel. Your only concern should be with the preparation of your own worthiness and receptivity. Krishna says to Arjuna, carry out your action with total intensity and leave all concern for the fruits to the divine. If you are constantly anxious about the result of your meditation, if you are looking for symptoms and expecting rewards, your anxiety will completely disrupt your presence and your performance will go off track. Settle down into the action itself. Let your chaotic breathing be total. Let your inner inquiry be absolute, and let the results take care of themselves. If you rely on the momentary glimpse received through an outside influence, you will find that the effect wears off by and by. Anything that comes from another is bound to diminish and fade away because it is a foreign energy. If I pick up a heavy stone and hurl it high into the air, the stone cuts through the wind and flies beautifully, and it may well think that it has found its own wings and that no one can stop its flight. But its flight is completely limited by the force exerted by my hand behind it. The moment that force exhausts itself, the stone is bound to fall back to the earth. The only purpose of an outside helper, the only value of a fleeting psychic experience is that in that brief moment of light, you are inspired to locate your own internal source. It is exactly like I light a tiny matchstick in a dark room. The flame of the matchstick is highly limited. It will burn for a few moments and go out, plunging the room into darkness once again. Now you can use this matchstick in two ways. Firstly, you can sit comfortably in the dark, dependent on my matchstick, fearing the exact moment when it will burn out. This will turn your life into a vicious circle of constant dread and dependency. Secondly, the moment the match is lit, you can use its brief light to locate the exit door, and you run out of the dark house completely. Once you are out under the vast, brilliant sun, it makes absolutely no difference to you whether my matchstick is burning or extinguished. You have reached the source. Never turn the matchstick into your ultimate destination. If a medium tries to stop your progress, claiming that he alone holds the true matchstick and that you must take a vow of lifelong loyalty to his person, know that he is an agent of darkness. He has stolen his matchsticks from the ancient scriptures, and he does not know their true spiritual use. True light is meant to liberate you, to make you completely independent, free of all boundaries and relationships. When you see the actual light of your own soul, the 99% of worldly gurus will be proved to be the absolute enemies of light. You will see clearly how they have crushed your spirit and killed your inner quest just to satisfy their own complexes of power. Walk your path with absolute determination, accepting hints from wherever they come, offering your silent gratitude, and moving forward toward the ultimate void where all separate identities are erased forever. As you penetrate your inner space, you will find that the structure of the subtle bodies and the chakras is a beautifully organized staircase. In Search of the Miraculous, Volume 1_2 emphasizes that meditation is nothing short of a total death and a glorious resurrection. You are taking birth, and you are also giving birth. Your spiritual self is being born through your own body-mind mechanism. Therefore, you must go through the double suffering of the childbirth and the trauma of absolute insecurity together. When the sleeping serpent is disturbed, your entire physical frame will shake like an earthquake, and all your repressed emotional filth will surface to be cleansed. Do not get frightened by this inner chaos. If your body begins to turn, twist, roll on the ground, or scream with intense force, let it happen with absolute ease and spontaneity. All the ancient postures and gestures of yoga were discovered accidentally by seers who simply let go of their bodies in deep meditation. They were not created by intellectual planning. If you try to suppress these movements, out of social shame or fear of what the people around you will say, you will thoroughly damage your inner state, and the Kundalini will remain blocked at its very starting point. Let go of your body completely, like a leaf floating on a swift river, and let the question, "Who am I?" cut through your illusions until the mind has nothing more to say. Settle into the absolute silence of the fourth stage, where all your doing is completely erased. It is only in that profound, thought-free emptiness that your true spiritual nature is revealed, and you realize that you are not the body, you are not the breath, and you are not the mind, but the boundless, immortal consciousness that wraps around the entire universe. To understand the absolute depths of this inner transformation, you must observe the deep mechanics of the dynamic methods. The reason we begin with such intense physical action is because your consciousness is currently deeply identified with the grossest layer of your existence. You live in your physical body, you think through your physical brain, and you react through your physical nervous system. Therefore, any true spiritual journey must start precisely where you are. When you engage in the first stage, which is 10 minutes of fast, deep and chaotic breathing, you are not simply performing a lung exercise. You are altering the entire bioelectrical balance of your biological structure. By forcing an immense amount of oxygen into your blood, you alter the ratio between oxygen and carbon dioxide. This chemical shift immediately hammers your dormant nerve centers, sending a powerful shock wave straight to the pool of vital energy at the base of your spine. For thousands of lives, you have accumulated hidden layers of emotional conditioning, social taboos, and psychological repressions. Every time you controlled your anger to look civilized, every time you held back your tears to look strong, you buried a live bomb inside your nervous system. These repressed neuroses form hard frozen knots inside your body, blocking the natural flow of your life force. The chaotic breathing creates a magnificent internal cyclone that shakes these knots to their very roots, forcing the hidden filth of your unconsciousness to surface. As this internal storm reaches its absolute peak, you must transition effortlessly into the second stage, which is 10 minutes of total physical and emotional catharsis. In Search of the Miraculous, Volume 1_2, emphasizes that meditation is a process of total death and glorious resurrection, And this second stage is where you allow the old artificial self to die. You must let go of your physical body completely, leaving it absolutely free to express whatever has been buried inside its basements for decades. If your body wants to shake, let it shake. If your limbs want to twist and turn, let them move with absolute spontaneity. If ancient tears well up in your eyes, let them flow like a river. And if a primal scream rises in your throat, let it rip through the silence with full-throated intensity. The civilized man has completely forgotten how to laugh totally and cry totally. You have been trained from early childhood to be a mechanical puppet, always managing your behavior, always wearing a false facade to please the crowd around you. But this respectability is a psychological straitjacket that keeps your soul imprisoned in a state of deep unconscious sleep. In this camp, surrounded by the pine trees and the vast ocean, there is no one to judge you and no one to condemn you. You are completely alone with existence. Therefore, drop all your fears of what others will say. If you look at those who are screaming, laughing, and wildly dancing, do not find excuses to protect your ego by calling them insane or hysterical. Insanity is when you are a helpless prisoner to your unconscious mind. But when you deliberately allow your body to catharge with full awareness, you are cleansing your temple. The great mystic Gurdjieff understood this mechanism of human repression so deeply that he used extraordinary methods to uncover the hidden reality of his disciples. Whenever a seeker came to him for spiritual discipline, Gurdjieff would make them drink alcohol heavily for 15 days until they were completely drunk, and he would sit silently, closely observing their behavior in that state of intoxication. Because when a man is drunk, his civilized mask falls off immediately. His cultivated manners disappear, and his real, raw personality stands completely exposed. If he is a violent man, his hidden violence will erupt. If he is a sexual pervert, his perversion will manifest. And if he is an innocent child inside, his childhood simplicity will shine forth. Only after Gurdjieff had fully mapped out the repressed neuroses of the seeker's unconscious mind would he design a specific spiritual work for them. He knew that unless the basement of your mind is thoroughly cleansed of its hidden garbage, no true spiritual architecture can ever be built on top of it. Our dynamic meditation achieves this exact same catharsis without the need for alcohol, simply by using the powerful fire of your own awakened life force. You must let go so totally that your body turns into a wild vortex of energy, burning away all your psychological masks until you are brought face to face with your innermost nudity. When your physical frame has been completely electrified and loosened by this catharsis, you must instantly move into the third stage, turning your entire gathered power into a sharp existential weapon. For 10 minutes, you must hammer your consciousness with the question, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? This inquiry is not an intellectual game, nor is it a puzzle that you can answer with words or philosophical definitions. It is a powerful mental spade meant to dig through the heavy, stagnant layers of your mind. To comprehend how a simple thought can strike a physical center, you must look closely at the relationship between your mind and your body. When you close your eyes and make a detailed imaginary picture of a sexual nature, your physical body responds instantly. Your heartbeat quickens, your blood pressure rises, and your biological sex center becomes intensely stimulated, even though there is no real object present before you. The thought alone carries material weight. It hits your biological organs from within. In Search of the Miraculous, Volume 2, underscore 2, notes that even your past actions and conditionings, your karmas, exist as literal subtle atoms clinging to your energy field, forming a heavy scum around your consciousness. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, creates a physical vibration, a material ripple in the universe,